Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Inclusive Networker podcast. This is your host, Dr. Ramona, and who am I calling into conversation today? Well, it is Breauna Dorelus. Let me tell you about Breauna. Breauna Dorelus is the founder and chief cause consultant at Connecting the Cause. That's a consultancy dedicated to dismantling harmful volunteer practices implemented by nonprofits and volunteers towards Black and Brown communities. Breauna believes in community inclusion in all aspects of the volunteer process and has dedicated her work to ensuring that service is centered around co-dreaming and not harmful charity. She believes that best practices may not be the best for all and that we must look at service through the lens of community-centered support in order to create a more just future. And I will tell you, I absolutely love Breauna Dorelus. I have known her for many years, since she was a toddler, and I have watched her grow up into this amazing community servant, this leader. And I am so excited for you all to just be a fly on the wall in this conversation because our hearts are so connected in so many different ways. So, Breauna, welcome to the Inclusive Networker podcast. Finally, I got you.
We are here. Here. I am so excited to share this space with you and to see and navigate just where our worlds have ended up through like growing. We grew up, okay? Say words together. Like I know Mona, she know me as Bree. Like it's the real deal. I'm excited to occupy this space with you, to share with you. I'm honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yes. And so, I do know a lot about you, but as you have grown up, as I said, you have become this force in the world, and I'm so very proud. And so tell me, how you developed this lens. What is your lens? What's your background? How did you get to this place where you're doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So my mom absolutely was and is a nurturer. My dad is a conductor, does not meet a stranger. And I literally remember growing up and being in community with people. I'd be in town and my dad would be like, "Hey, Bree, come here, let me introduce you to somebody." And I'd be like, "Okay." And they're like, "This your cousin." And I'd be like, "Okay, cousin, hey, I don't know their name. I don't know, any connection." I knew 9 out of 10 times we were probably not blood related.
Yeah.
But I knew that meant I was there for them. They were there for me. I knew there was a sense of kinship and connectedness. And so I really learned community from my parents and how they navigated their spaces. I learned community through the way that they shared things with people, with each other. I learned the way they instilled family and dignity within us. And also my mom being that nurturer, nurturing, gifts inside of me. And so she would see me gravitating towards National Geographic books when I would be in stores. And she would be like, "Oh, what's this interest?" And so she put me in Model United Nations. And so at like a very young age, I realized that there are entities and spaces that are tackling like large, hard world issues, and that they're important and that they matter, and that I'm thinking about these things at like a really young age. I am navigating and thinking about what I want to do, who I want to be. And I realized there is this world that's called the nonprofit space, the nonprofit sector. And so I had an opportunity in college to study abroad in Costa Rica. I had the opportunity to volunteer abroad in Honduras. And I had one of those moments of like, how can I do something like this for the rest of my life? I had one of those. And so that was really the spark that started me thinking about service and volunteerism from a global perspective. And then here I joined AmeriCorps. I go through humanitarian aid organizations working in volunteerism, refugee resettlement, guiding people through volunteer experiences, and working in ministry, and then working in holistic neighborhood development, all of these things. And as my journey continues, I start recognizing and understanding my identity within these places. So here I am, a Black woman who's in volunteer engagement. And there's so many instances where I'm starting to see volunteers pity and paternalize communities that look like me. I also start to hear from bosses, from supervisors, how can we make the volunteers happy? How can we make sure they keep coming back? And oftentimes, what made volunteers happy were not the things that impacted the community. And so it was at a crossroads where I was like, do I do my job that's been assigned to me, or do I look out for the cousins, right? The aunties, the people that I'm connected to, that I'm navigating life with. And so all these instances of volunteers having lack of lived experience, honestly, and not being connected and not being in community with the people they're wanting to help. So they only know them based on their needs. They only know them based on what they can give them, but not knowing them based on their whole identities, their opinions, their likes, their thoughts, their favorite foods. Like, these things don't matter because right now my ego is getting filled, and then I feel like I'm solving, this world issue in one, 3-hour volunteer sitting, and then I can keep moving forward. And so I didn't want to navigate that anymore. I didn't want to have to choose, and I was like, there has to be, a different way. And I start to remember the history of my grandfather on my mom's side and my grandmother, and the 8th grade education, the 3rd grade education that they had, but still what dignity they brought to their work. And my grandfather being a sharecropper, and then moving forward and having his own land of multiple acres and navigating his own businesses. And I'm like, what and who are Black people when we are free, when we are liberated, when we are operating in community? And so much of the philanthropic sector has now just brushed us down to, these are the people who we give to, and they should be happy about it. And so I founded Connecting the Cause because I wanted to navigate and dismantle and interrupt this system of Black folks are only here to be given to. I wanted to find that those spaces of liberation and justice, so that Black voices are heard and appreciated in these spaces. And we're not just the given to, we're the givers. We are the leaders. We are the Black-led organizations that you are coming to in order to help our, increase our work. And so I wanted to change that and dismantle that for the good, because I knew how it felt when I myself was in board meetings and staff meetings, and someone new would come in, and even though I was the manager, I was the director, they would look to the intern who was white just because they were white. And I remember having to navigate, and I was like, wow, if I feel like that here, of course there's this paternalism, this pity, this hierarchy that's happening in volunteerism, because philanthropy has put us in this place. And it didn't just put us in this place because Black people are prone to be in need. We are put in these places because the systems that were created, that founded this country, were not designed for us to thrive. And so we have to take a look at the systems and the reasons for why the landscape is like it is, and not blame people, because when you blame people, then people turn into projects that you have to solve. And that is not the culmination of Black people in this world.
Oh, this is so good. And it reminds me of how I came to this work because I'm working with companies and I'm looking at the top of these companies and I'm like, there are no Black women at the top of this
Yeah,
company. Make it make sense
make it make sense.
because I know how hard I've seen these women working. And this is a 40-year history
Mm,
of not seeing these women at the top of this company. And so now it's not, again, what you just said, blaming individuals and saying it's something you're doing wrong. You're not doing enough. You got to work harder. Giving us this, there's so much to unpack in this, but continuing to perpetuate this strong Black woman schema, right?
yes,
Like do more, you gotta be more, be better to get to the top, right? So it's not that, it's not the individual, it's how do we look at the system? Yes, individuals make up the system, but we also have to see that if the system is not allowing the individual to thrive,
yes,
then there's no way that
yes.
they can work hard enough to overcome those types of things, right? So it's interesting something that you said, that the volunteers and individuals are not in community, that they only knew the people from their need. And I think that's so important for us to remember, is that we have got to get out of our own lens. And that's why I ask everybody their lens, because I want to know why you think the way you do. But I also need to know, I need you to see that you have a lens, regardless of how inclusive that lens is, you still
Right.
have a lens. And we've got to be able to open up to other people's perspectives and really embrace difference. And so, oh, this is already so good, Breauna. Okay. So, when you said philanthropy has put us in this place, tell
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about your thoughts about that.
Yeah. Oh, so as I dig deeper and deeper in philanthropy, I'm like,
Mhm.
my.
Mhm.
Somehow people believe that because the nonprofit space in general is altruistic, is
Mhm.
doing good work,
Mhm.
we have somehow escaped the grips of white supremacy.
Mm.
Oh, yes, businesses. Yes, business have white supremacy. Yes, education system. Yes, healthcare system. But no, the nonprofits, they're good because they do good
Mhm.
stuff for people. They fill in the gap. But with us filling in the gap, we've become a system ourselves,
Mhm.
and a harmful system at that. And
Mhm.
so we have to look at philanthropy from how it was created in the institutions that we have now. So, first off, when you think about the history of philanthropy, white, rich, elite men were the ones that got to decide who were and were not deserving of charity.
Mhm.
They became elite white men because the businesses and the industrial revolution allowed them to build a system of wealth with the haves and the have-nots.
Mhm.
So once they establish who are the ones that need help, they said white women who were widows and young white children. Those were the ones who needed our most support. So, of course, number one, we're out of the picture. And we're out of the picture mainly because at that time, we actually weren't considered people. We were three-fifths, we were
Mhm.
considered property. So, of
Mhm.
course, it wasn't even a thing for us to be considered of, oh, let's make sure they're taken care of. And so, as we navigate and think about who is the haves and have nots, we then move into who and how do we tackle the issue of poverty.
Mhm.
If we tackle the issue of poverty from a systemic level, then the white elites would have to tell on themselves because they created the system. But
Mhm.
we're not going to tackle it that way. We're going to tackle it through a band-aid approach that
Mhm.
poverty is your fault. If you would only get a better job, if you only had more motivation, if you would only pull yourself up by the bootstraps, then you would be able to be like us.
Mm-hmm.
And so they filled the gaps by saying, well, we're just going to give you more food. We're just going to give you more housing. We're just going to give you A, B, and C. But they don't change the conditions
Mm-hmm.
of people. And so move forward, as these systems were not built for us, healthcare system, education system, criminal punishment system, we start navigating these places and spaces. And as we come up, we are now on the receiving end of that service because we are the ones that are most vulnerable. Why
Mm-hmm.
are we the most vulnerable? Not because there is some innate DNA characteristic that makes Black folks A, B, C, and D, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't built for us in the first
First
place.
place.
So we
Mm-hmm.
have to go all the way back to the beginning to
Mm-hmm.
recognize who it was built for, why was it built, and then in order, and it goes on, in order for us to get the donations, we have to pull at the heartstrings. How do we pull at the heartstrings? We make sure that Black and brown folks look the most desolate that they could ever,
Mm-hmm.
because then we are calling on their sympathy, and
Mm-hmm.
sympathy drives dollars. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to get to the point, even from donors, from business owners, people who want to connect to this, they have to say, I want to donate, or I want to be a part of good work, because I believe that Black folks are meant to thrive and meant to be here in the future. It
Mm-hmm.
can't come from a deficit perspective of, I want them to be better because if they just had this job, they could be like me. Or if they
Mm-hmm.
just had, if they just assimilated better, then they could do this good thing. And so I want to help and protect that. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I want you to value who I am as a person, which also means valuing my humanity, valuing my dignity, but also valuing my nose and
Mm-hmm.
valuing my anger and
Mm-hmm.
valuing my skills and my experiences, all of those things together. So it's so important for us to dig and know that history so that we
Mm-hmm.
can change. And let me say this,
Mm-hmm.
in our communities, before we ever came on a ship to the United States, belonging and connectedness and shared care is a part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that was developed through philanthropy. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that we innately have as a community to take care of one another. And
Mm-hmm.
systems have disallowed us and disconnected us from being able to do that in all of the ways that we can. The good and amazing thing about us being resilient, amazing folks is that we still find ways to do what we need to do to get the job done,
Mm-hmm.
while at the same time understanding and recognizing that there are systems that allow hard things and harmful, violent things to happen that keep
Mm-hmm.
us where the system wants us to be, because the system is working perfectly for how it was designed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then how are we taking all of this into volunteerism? Because I know that a lot of times people say they want to have a mission, they want to have something
Yep.
that they do with the money, the funding that they get from their organizations, and then they go into these communities. And then they are just like, well, I'm going to make them like me. Like you
Yes.
said, I want to make sure that they are having the same customs, the same culture, the same
Yes.
privilege that I have. And so I'm going to move them into that space. And so, talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that people make as they're starting to volunteer and bringing in
Yeah.
their volunteer into other countries and communities.
Yes. Who I'm gonna have to pick a top three. Let me
Okay, yeah, pick top three.
yeah, let me pick a top three.
Okay.
So definitely one mistake is that people feel like they are the experts of someone
Mhm.
else's lived experience.
Mhm.
We're coming in, and because I have this wealth, because say we're dealing with someone who's unhoused.
Mhm.
Um, because, I have a house, because I pay a mortgage, because I know about home ownership, I am going to come in this organization and mentor this unhoused person and make sure they get on their feet. This particular person may be dealing with trauma, may be dealing with mental illness, may be dealing with loss of hope, may be dealing with things where they did have a home. Who's to say they haven't had a home before? There's all of these preconceived notions that come in that are based on racism, that are based on stereotypes, that are based on what they've heard. And so, because one of the things that white supremacy does and that whiteness can do when you embody that is that there's either a right or wrong way. There's either a right way to do something or a wrong way to do something. So I know the right way. I am coming in. I'm going to teach you the right way. You should be grateful for the right way. There is no room for you to be able to grow and connect with me. It is a top-down power hierarchy where I'm coming in because I'm the one that has something that you need. Therefore, you're in the bottom of the totem pole, and I'm the one who is actually, navigating what things, should be and what should happen. And so when we think about those experiences and you come in with all of your master's degrees and education and skills, that doesn't mean that their lived experience is not valid. It doesn't mean that it is not worthy. And so that's one of the things that I come in. And then once they try to put that on folks, and then there's a tad bit of resistance, oh, they're ungrateful. Oh, they don't, they're just all the same. They don't want our help. They don't want our support. You should be grateful that someone like me is coming in. And it's funny because people won't say this out loud, but they'll have it all up in here.
Yeah.
It comes out very subtly, in some way. So that's one thing that I think that happens when it comes to harm. Another piece is when people come in and they already have preconceived notions around who Black and brown folks are. And what they do is they separate the good ones from the bad ones. And so what ends up happening is, say there is a white woman that's going to go to a boys and girls club and mentor a group of Black children. They will go in and start mentoring, start helping, and start supporting. They start developing a relationship with those children, and they start to take ownership of them in a paternalistic way and say, those are mine. But then they could walk out of the doors, out of that boys and girls club, go to Walmart, see a group of Black children the same age as the children that they're mentoring, and automatically have a feeling of unsafety or have a feeling of something is about to happen, or let me be on guard. And so what they've done is they know how to connect because they are in a position of power, and those particular folks are in a place of need. But when they come out of that, they don't know how to deal, how to interact, how to build genuine, mutually reciprocal relationships with Black and brown folks. And so then there's a white saviorism aspect that comes in of like, I know them because they're the good ones, but these are the bad ones. And I deal differently with each of them according to how I feel and according to my ego and how I operate within saviorism. And so that's a big thing, that I have continued to see over and over again, of that lack of humanity for all and only for the ones that you're good with. And then one last piece that I've really seen where volunteerism has taken a toll is where there is a constant extraction from the community in different ways over and over again. So days of service are held in communities where businesses and business leaders come in for one day with their t-shirts and their coffee mugs, and they come in and make the difference, and
Mm-hmm.
then they leave the next day, don't hear from them ever again. There's not a situation where a relationship was built. There's no long-term support. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you have a community that every time they interact with white folks, they are in a position where they are the ones being given to their on the receiving end. There is no asking or prodding or about long lasting relationship. There's no lingering within the
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very transactional, one and done.
Mm-hmm.
And I know of communities that they have 6, 7, 8 corporate groups, high school groups, businesses coming just in and out, that are putting band-aids. Let's
Mm-hmm.
pack the backpacks. Let's give
Mm-hmm.
them the food, but they don't want to hear about the reason this particular community is in the position it's in, if it's not about their character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those people. I see folks mustering and being able to say, "Oh yeah, it's because they made bad choices."
Mm-hmm.
I can sit with the fact that they made bad choices, because I can help them
Mm-hmm.
make better choices. But when you say it's because of an education system or an healthcare system that honestly your privilege has contributed to in the running of that system, that's when it's like, I just came to
Mm-hmm.
volunteer.
Yeah.
I didn't come here to hear root causes.
Uh-huh.
I came here to solve the problem by packing the backpack. Let me pack the
Mm-hmm.
backpack and let me
Wow.
go on with the rest of my day. And
Yeah.
so we're not, a lot of times I run into people not ready to have the conversation
Mm-hmm.
that your business purchases, the where you shop, who you patron, who you support, all of that has to do with why there are certain communities that are historically and presently intentionally repressed
Mm-hmm.
from being able to thrive. And
Mm-hmm.
you're a part of the harm. And so it's a weird cycle of you creating and being a part of the privilege that causes that, while at the same time you come in a day and you try to fix something, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, we're good to
You're
go,
good.
our
Mm-hmm.
are clean, when
Mm-hmm.
you start back the next day, being a part of that system.
Yeah, and when you really start to dig down in that and to talk about those issues, that's when this individualism comes out. And it's like,
Yes.
hey, I was able to get there. I picked myself up by my bootstraps and I made it and I'm good to go. So why aren't you? And it's like you can see people just backing when you start to have those real
Yep.
conversations.
Yep.
And I have done so much community engagement with companies, and I will tell you, I was at a meeting the other day with a company, and I was talking to them about their work with a sickle cell community,
Mm,
the sickle cell community, and of course, mainly individuals with sickle cell disease are Black individuals,
mm,
Black and brown individuals. Not all, not exclusively, but it primarily affects African Americans. And so, when I was talking to them, I was talking to them about they had this group of researchers together, and we were the experts. And it was like, we're bringing you together to talk about what we want to do in this community. We're
mm.
developing these new programs and these products, and here's all the things we found, and we're giving this to you all to look through and to give us your feedback on. And so after a while, I said, "Well, when are you going to talk to the sickle cell community about this?"
Well,
And they said, "Oh, you all are the experts. We're just going to talk to you. We'll talk to them at some point down the road." And I literally had a visceral reaction to this, and I almost fainted. I was like, "Are you serious?
wow.
They are the experts.
Yes.
You have to start with them first and then come tell us after. Now, me being a person who has sickle cell disease, I was like, let me take my hat off as an expert and put on my hat as an individual with sickle cell disease
Yes.
so that I can tell you that this is not okay. You
Yes.
can't look at us as, okay, we come into this community, we have developed these things for you. Isn't it great that we have done this for you? We are the best company because we developed this thing for you. And
Mm,
then the people in the community are like, that doesn't work for us. I don't
right.
care about pain. I really wish you could fix my fatigue, right? So
Mm,
it's like there's so many things that we're not getting to because we're not involved
yes.
in the community because we think that they're not the experts of their own life. And it absolutely drives me nuts when
I
I see
mean,
companies do this, and it's like and everything, every way that it's set up, the systems, the model is set where, oh, we can't pay patients, we can pay researchers all of this money, but we can't give this money to the community. When we have grants, we can't give the money to the community because they don't know what they're doing with it. And
see,
so
see
we've
that
got to do
paternalism. That
yes.
paternalism that comes into that is just, don't get me started, Ramona. Don't
I
get,
want you started. You on the
don't,
podcast. Go ahead. Let it go.
because I see what people don't realize is what are the bottom line mindsets of those
Mhm.
decisions that are
Mhm.
made.
Mhm.
It's they will never say this out loud, but you have to believe in order for you to make those decisions that community doesn't need the money that because they don't know what to do with it. They infantize us as children
Mhm.
that we do not know how to create autonomy for our own lives.
Mhm.
And then there's a sense of squander and squalor.
Mhm.
Like we just
Mhm.
won't we'll spend it on frivolous things because we won't
Mhm.
know what to do with it. And
Mhm.
all of that are those racist, white supremacist stereotypes that
Mhm.
have not left, they've just matured and they've said
Mhm.
it better and they say it in different
Mhm.
places and in different
Mhm.
times. And that's why I'm so convinced of Black led leadership in nonprofit spaces,
Mm.
where so many of Black leadership comes directly from the community that's being
Mhm.
served. How
Mhm.
many billions and billions of dollars throughout the years have been wasted on community initiatives that are not for the community, that fall flat and just flop because it's not taken on by the community because it's not what they wanted in the first place.
Mhm.
And what is the end result of the conversation when they're back in the room and people ask, why didn't this work? It's not because we're at fault because we didn't listen to the community. It's literally, oh, the community didn't take it and run with it. It's their
Mhm.
fault that they didn't
They
adopt
didn't
what we
participate.
do. They
Mhm.
didn't participate. And so
Mhm.
we had lack of buy-in. That's
Mhm.
never the conversation. The
Yep.
conversation is, well, let's tweak this and let's, try it again. Let's send out some more flyers. The
Mhm.
amount of flyers and block
Mhm.
parties and uh handing out turkeys for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
These one-off transactional situation. How
Mhm.
let's even think of, okay, Thanksgiving's coming up.
Mhm.
People are about to be in the giving spirit.
Mhm.
How undignifying is it to open the back of a U-Haul truck
Mhm.
in a community and stand on top of it and hand down turkey
Mhm. Mhm.
to people who are in lines? How much dignity is actually there? How much relationship building is actually happening? How many conversations are ensuing so that later on, there's a wait a second. I had this conversation with this woman, and they actually don't want turkeys right now. She needs help working on her resume.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many of those conversations ensue when
Mm-hmm.
we do charity from a
Yeah.
top-down model
Mm-hmm.
instead of a reciprocal relationship neighborhood approach?
Mm-hmm.
We miss the mark. And this is something, as I do my consultancy work, I really think sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't know if there's going to be a place for this. I don't know if there's going to be room
Mm-hmm.
for this. And Ramona, over and over and over and over, I see churches,
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit organizations, civic organizations who are consistently doing this without dignity, without respect. They think they're hearing from the community because they have focus groups, because
Mm-hmm.
they have surveys, but then they're the ones that are implementing the plans. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
community that's implementing the plans. They don't give
Mm-hmm.
power back where power is due. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these situations where we're really running on a hamster wheel, and especially I think about Atlanta, the place where the birthplace of the civil rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
where there are so many Black and brown folks,
Mm-hmm.
where there are I mean, our nonprofit footprint is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Our corporate headquarter footprint is
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the the our wealth gap between Black and white is just astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that still?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not having the correct conversations, and we are not walking in this posture of co-dreaming that we're talking about. And we
Mm-hmm.
like to throw money at stuff and not have relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or we like to have big forums of expertise about youth development and ain't not one youth in the room. Like
Mm-hmm.
we are just we just playing in Play-Doh
Mm-hmm.
at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it does my heart good to see when I see black and brown led organizations doing this work, but it
Mm-hmm.
hurts my heart because money is going to bigger, larger United Ways, American Red Cross, and there's nothing wrong with those organizations, but the people on the ground that are closest to the solutions are not getting the support that they need. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we have things like Giving Tuesday that's also coming up,
Mm-hmm.
it's the people that do the best marketing that get the most money.
Mm.
And it's not the ones who do the better work that really deserve
Yes.
that. And that's why I said earlier, I want you, in order for people to know where to give money or where to volunteer or where to support, you have to be in community with Black and brown folks, because there's an
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem that we carry,
Mm-hmm.
and we know where the money should go.
Mm-hmm.
We know the organizations that are doing the good work. Have those conversations so then you're able to know, oh, this is where I give my money. This is where I support my time. This is where I invest. And I
Mm-hmm.
want folks to latch on to an organization for the long haul. I want them to latch on to a cause for the long haul
Mm-hmm.
and know that it's not a band-aid situation. But I mean, over and over again, we got MLK Day of Service coming up in January.
Mm-hmm.
I did some consultant work with United Way of King County. They are amazing. They are so forward in racial equity work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a big fan of theirs. And one of the things that they have continuously done is shown up for the community in marvelous ways. And one of those ways is they had a huge um, citywide day of caring where
Mm-hmm.
everybody came out, everybody volunteered. They realized that actually this day of caring is transactional. It's only boosting from a business standpoint. It's not
Mm-hmm.
boosting from a community impact standpoint. And ta-da, they got rid of it.
Mm.
They got rid of it. And
Mm-hmm.
some executive directors would clutch their pearls
Mm-hmm.
to hear that we stopped something that brought
Mm-hmm.
out all these people. And yes, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not benefiting the actual mission that you have plastered on the wall in your office.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even benefiting that. So what's the point? So as these MLK days of service and things pop up, it's like, what are we really doing? We have to know that this is a long game, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna take hard work, and it's gonna take being rooted in truth and also going along your own journey of the biases I hold, the the
Mm-hmm.
the racist feelings that I hold, the supremacy and whiteness that I hold, and what does that look like to re-navigate that? And I will say, so many of us Black folks, we have internalized oppression that we carry too,
Oh,
because we're
absolutely.
white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so even more wealthy Black folks who volunteer, they may have some class issues that they need to work out.
Mm-hmm.
They may need to work out, oh, these the good Black folks, but these ain't over here, and
Mm-hmm.
navigate that it's not a them problem, it's a system problem that's created a you against them issue
Mm-hmm.
too. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of navigation. And then lastly, even me, I'm a Black woman, but I'm going to Honduras. They know me as an American.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much privilege does that hold,
Oh, yes.
right? In a
Mm-hmm.
different country where they're, laying out the red carpet and they're using money on us to have a good experience, an orphanage, using money for us to have a good experience
Mm-hmm.
when that money should be going to the orphanage and the children themselves. But because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it's hard to navigate sometimes of the very thing that sparked this in me,
Mm-hmm.
also the very place I created my own harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so having to even navigate, that perspective too, is so nuanced. So you have to think and look for yourself of where do I fit in all of this?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the place to start, because I know people are like, okay, we can see that there's an issue. We see that we're upholding white supremacy. We're seeing that we're doing harmful things in volunteerism. We can see this. And so where do you have companies start
Yeah.
with this, and how do you help them to move forward so that they get rid of these harmful practices, and that they really
Yeah.
start to connect with communities and understand that that the community is the expert
Yeah.
as they're going in?
Yeah. So one of the things that I push every business corporation to do, of course, we have corporate social responsibility. We have, certain spaces where people have initiatives of doing good. I want people to look at their strategy, write down what their practices are, write down what their policies are around those practices, and I want them to look up white supremacy characteristics.
Mm.
And I want them to look at each of those policies, each of those procedures and practices, and say, how does this measure up in dismantling these things?
Mm.
That's the first thing that I want people to do, because I think it's a real eye opener when you talk about, okay, what are we going to be measuring? We're going to be measuring how many volunteers. We're going to be measuring how many backpacks. We're going to be measuring this. But one of the white supremacy characteristics is quantity over quality.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
It's the numbers over the quality of relationships, right? And
Mhm.
so literally matching that up, and it's the recognition of, so that's one thing. Number two is, how committed are we to doing this right? And having to deeply ask that question, because are you going to be like a united way, and once you figure out that something's harmful, you stop it?
Mhm.
Or are you going to justify it and say,
Mhm.
well, it helps our mission in this way, maybe not this way? You have to figure out who you want to be when it comes to helping, and knowing what that is. And also, thirdly, you have to take accountability for the harm you've already done. You have to be able to say, for the last 10 years, we've been throwing money and we haven't to this organization, and we have not heard what they actually wanted, because we dictate how many volunteers come. We dictate what time we want them to be there. We dictate what our experience is going to be. And we have to recognize that we actually have not been in community with the nonprofit that we're working with, which means we're not in community with the people that they are walking alongside. And then lastly, I would say, take a cause and go deep. Take a nonprofit partner and go deep. And when I say deep, I mean understand the story of the cause. So like we were talking about philanthropy before, if you want to be a person of knowing about philanthropy, I got to know the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. It's so interesting to me sometimes, like a couple of years ago, there was a situation where I was in a workshop, and there was a woman who was in there, and you could just tell she was flustered by everything I was saying, just flustered. And something came to me, and a voice inside, and was just like, she's so upset that you're interrogating the good. And we have to get comfortable with interrogating the good. The good things that we do, are they really good? How are they really good? You know, what does it look like for us to, what does good mean? Is it good for us? Is it good for them?
Is it good for my ego?
Is it good for my ego?
Yeah.
Like really navigating what that good is, because once you find out what is and isn't good ain't good for everybody. And then taking accountability of that and saying, you know what, I've caused that harm. I have to be responsible for that harm. And then I have to work to rebuild and healing. Like, what can I do in my power to repair and rebuild? And so then, taking something, going deep. When I say go deep, answering all those questions about it being good. And then also knowing the racial aspects of that particular cause. In so many causes that I have researched, that I thought about, that I'm connected to, it's one thing to have cancer if you're a white woman. It's a different thing to have cancer if you're a Black woman. It's one thing to have after school activities if you're a 12-year-old white girl than having the same thing as an 11-year-old, Asian boy. There's different levels. And so having to navigate and disaggregate the data and be like, what does this mean for Black and brown folks who experience this cause? And if we want to understand the cause, we have to look at it from a systems perspective. So how can we work to dismantle the system versus every year we're coming out and making people projects? It's the Christmas project. It's the Thanksgiving project. It's the New Year project. We're not projects. We are people.
Yes.
And
I love
so,
that.
we don't need help. Like Lilla Watson says, Aboriginal activists, we need liberation. And so that is that root of understanding. It's a long game. It's an infinite game. And our responsibility is to know that it's challenging and to tackle the challenge and be okay with it, with the fact that it may not be solved in that business lifetime while they're there. But while they're there, we're going to do good, and we're going to be known as a champion for the community versus just the bottom line.
Wow. Y'all gonna have to listen to this like 3 or 4 times. I'm telling you, this is so good.
I get fast and start spewing. I'm like,
No,
oh,
I mean everything is just spot on, and we can translate everything that you're talking about into business, because I
yeah.
constantly say when I'm talking about how to transform business with my ROAR framework that I have, that's
Mm,
recruitment, onboarding, activity, and retention. And I tell people, when you're going through and you're looking at your if it's a presentation system or if it's how a product is moving through the company, your
yes,
company or your team has to think about how this product moves when you're moving it through different cultures, different
yes,
age groups. If
yes.
you are saying, okay, everybody and I always use suntan lotion, as
Uh-huh.
everybody needs suntan lotion as an example. So we put this out here and we say, okay, a black woman who is 40 years old, you go out and sell that to your community, and then a young white woman go out and push that
Mm.
in your community, and let's see who has the higher sales volume,
Come
right?
on, Ramona. Yeah,
We have to think through these types of things. And
yeah,
so, how are we really thinking through the system and how it
yes.
works for different people, and then trying to mitigate some of that before we even put this stuff out there? And then we
Wow.
start the blame game and saying,
Mm.
oh, it didn't work for you because you didn't work hard enough. No, the people in my community are not going to buy this. They don't want it.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah. So I mean, this is just so good, and so that piece of the policy and practice kind of audit that you talked about, and not going for quantity over quality, and then how committed are we to doing the right thing?
yes. Yeah.
That part, like,
Yep.
yes, a lot of times we notice what is going on,
We
we
not,
hear
yeah.
it,
Yep.
but how committed are we? Are
Yes.
we really saying we're going to not have this event that brings out thousands and thousands of people in the community, right? When we
Yes.
know it's not doing the work, because the other way was feeding our ego. This is what the way that we're going to change it to is going to feed the people,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
then the accountability for the harm that's already done. I mean, and then take a cause and go deep. And I think
Yeah.
that it's so interesting because I see it with a lot of churches, a lot of community groups. We're like, okay, we're gonna do this cause today. We're doing this cause tomorrow. We're
Yes.
picking this one. We're gonna do one every month or one every 3 months. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, but what are you really doing? Is it that you can say we're the best giver in the community?
Right.
Right? Or is it that you really want to see something different and you really want to help to dismantle the systems that are causing those children to have those issues, those people to be in
Yes.
poverty, all of that. And so, I mean, this opens my eyes to so many things as well. I'm constantly thinking about this and thinking about, how do we navigate the
Right.
community, and how do we navigate the business, and how do we engage and connect businesses to communities?
Yeah.
This is all of this is so important, and we often don't think about it, especially when there's billions of dollars on the line. We're developing
Right.
drugs,
Yes.
we're developing these products, and
That's right.
and we've got to go by the model that's been sent to us, or set up for us all these times before, all these years. And so it's a difficult system to change, but I really appreciate you for being a person who is going to stand and speak up and say, yeah, it's difficult to change, but somebody has got to
Yes.
say something, and somebody has got to do something different. And I
Yeah.
feel that same way about community engagement, and connecting communities to companies. And so,
Yeah.
Brianna, how do we keep in touch with you? We have got to follow you. We've got to do anything you're doing. We need to be listening in. So tell us, how do we keep in touch with you?
I'm mostly on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Okay.
So you can, find me on LinkedIn, Breauna Dorelus. You can find me on Instagram at Connecting the Cause. That's where I preach. That's my podium
Okay.
of being able to share. Also, just connectingthecause.com. There's just a forum there to be able to share thoughts. I'm so open to navigating ideas and thought processes and next steps. So if anybody says, hey, I was sent through, Ramona's podcast, I'm right. You top priority.
Oh, yes. Yeah, y'all go.
So yeah. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Breauna. And
Yeah,
this was even better than I had even anticipated. So you are absolutely
yeah.
amazing. And I want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Inclusive Networker podcast. Thank you again to my fabulous guest, Breauna Dorelus. You will find her information in the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode of the Inclusive Networker podcast. Bye.